Go in 3, 2, and 1.
In the name of the Galactic Senate of the Republic, you're under arrest, Chancellor. Are you threatening me, Master Jedi? The Senate will decide your fate. I am the Senate. Not yet. It's treason then.
All right, welcome to episode 129 of Nerdery Murdery.
Big 129, I'm Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery. Welcome to another week of the highs and lows, the ups and downs, the good and the bad, and the nerd and the murd. And we have Don Ladd back with us in the house again. Thank you, Don, for joining us again.
Oh, thanks for letting me sleep on your couch.
Oh, yeah. We're coming fresh off probably one of our longest episodes to date. It clocked in over 2 hours. Wow.
Nice. We talked about a lot of sitcoms.
Yeah, we
a
did.
Lot.
Yeah, we did. I had to share two things with you. The first thing, because I've told you before that I started up golfing and everything like that, and I'm taking lessons and things are getting progressively better. It's not great. I'm still spend a whole lot of time buried underneath trees and everything like that. It's a fun game. I enjoyed a lot, and like I said, taking the lessons to improve me or better. Well, yesterday we were playing, and on I think it was on the eighth hole. For some reason, the eighth hole is like my lucky hole, and I just do these booming drives straight down the middle. They tend to be straight in the middle of the fairway. They're great. So I hit that one, then hit a second one, got pretty close to the green, hit a third one on the green. So I'm on the green for putt 4, and I am excited. I'm not too far from the pin. It's putt 4. I'm going to get my first birdie, first ever to not get a par. I've gotten a few pars, and I putt, and it's beautiful, and it goes in the cup, and I'm all excited. It's like, yay, a birdie! And Chelsea said, this is a par 4, right? Damn it. So I didn't birdie. Oh, well. Anyway, it was fun to me.
That's good, right?
Birdies are good. Birdies are, you're under par. So
I don't know. You said golf and I fell asleep. So
no, golf. It's fun. It's a fun game. It's hard. It's very, very hard. The second thing I had, and this is just tragic for me. After 30 years or close to 30 years, I guess, my fantasy football team, the Seattle Trolls, is going to be no more. I'm very sad. I'm very upset.
Oh my God! I remember when you started.
Why is that?
Because I came in dead last.
Oh no!
Came in dead last.
So you have to change the name.
The name will be changed as a vote by my other fantasy football cohorts. They will change it probably to something vile, something disgusting, and the Seattle Trolls will no more, at least for this season. And I get
back on track.
Yeah. And then I get that terrible trophy and everything like that. So it's
that is a beautiful trophy.
Yeah, it is.
It's awful. It's very disgusting, very vile. So anyway,
and it has to be prominently displayed in your home.
Yeah. Somewhere.
Chelsea will love that.
Yes. I can tell you that Johnny and Rachel had it displayed in a place of pride in their home for a couple of years.
Yeah, well, Rachel had it for years. So.
Yeah, no, it's going to be mine now. So anyway, with all that, Zig, I will let you take over on the nerdery side of the house. I know it's been a while, but we're continuing on our Star Wars journey chronologically.
Yes.
So go ahead, Zig.
Okay, we're going to be talking about Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, or as Don pointed out earlier, Revenge of the Suck.
And I disagree with you.
I liked it. I actually like all of them. So.
I don't.
It is a 2005 American epic space opera film written and directed by George Lucas. It is his most recent directorial effort to date. It stars Ewan McGregor, Natalie Portman, Hayden Christensen, Ian McDiarmid, Samuel L. Jackson, Christopher Lee, Anthony Daniels, Kenny Baker, and Frank Oz. It is the sequel to Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. It is the 6th film in the Star Wars film series. the final installment in the Star Wars prequel trilogy, and third chronicling the chapters of the Skywalker saga. Revenge of the Sith is set 3 years after the onset of the Clone Wars, as established in Attack of the Clones. The Jedi are spread across the galaxy in a full-scale war against the Separatists. The Jedi Council dispatches Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi on a mission to defeat General Grievous, the head of the Separatist army and Count Dooku's former apprentice. To put an end to the war, meanwhile, after having visions of his wife Padme Amidala dying in childbirth, Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker is tasked with the Council to spy on Palpatine, the Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Republic, and secretly a Sith leader.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, lots of spoilers in this. I just watched this again this week because I wanted to revisit it. I don't think it's I don't think it's Return of the Suck at all. I think it is a good installment in the movies. While it's not the best, which to me is Empire Strikes Back. I think it's definitely far from the bottom. In the bottom, you're going to find the Phantom Menace and the Last Jedi and oh my God, why did I just forget a name?
The Force also rises, or whatever it is,
or the Force Awakens. Yeah.
I loved the sequel films. I really did.
I did not at all. I really, except for well, no, I mean, the Force Awakens is a good one. That's episode 7, and then episode 8 is the Last Jedi, and 9 is the Rise of Skywalker. Correct?
Yes.
I have that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The with the exception of the Force Awakens, which is really just a retelling of Star Wars: A New Hope. I'm not a huge fan of what they did with the sequels. You go back to this, and you had the Phantom Menace, which is good in parts and is okay. The Clone Wars, which is decent, and then Revenge of the Sith, which I think is actually a pretty good installment, except for the love story. It's just not believable. Hayden Christensen does not act well in this.
There's no chemistry.
There's no chemistry. It's not believable, but his fall towards the dark side is very good. The lightsaber sequences are outstanding. The fleet battle at the beginning is just
epic.
Is great. It is epic. I love those Jedi starfighters. But the love story is what really tears this one apart.
I think we mentioned this before. It's almost like they were writing this movie and they just about got the script finished. And like, okay, then they're setting up the shots. And like, oh shit, we forgot to put the love story in.
Yeah.
And then they threw it to somebody and went, oh yeah, okay, we'll do this. Okay, and there we go.
Yeah, well, it's like somebody went, yeah, of course they're in love because that has to happen for what comes later. So just do it.
Yeah.
No thought beyond that. So I'm not gonna.
George Lucas. Okay, George Lucas writes that way. That's why this stuff. George Lucas is a brilliant visualist.
Right.
George Lucas,
and a brilliant plagiarist.
Yes. He's also great at conceiving worlds. As far as character interplay, he has no idea what he's doing.
So he's really great at setting, making something feel epic, right?
Yes.
And he got that from the movies that he took things from, like the old World War II movies and stuff like that, which to me is why Rogue One is one of my absolute favorite Star Wars movies.
I think Rogue One is the best.
I think Rogue One is great. I don't think it's the best.
No, but what makes it great for me is that it is a World War II movie set in the Star Wars universe.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then of course talking about the later sequels is a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
I like to heap a lot of hate on it just because, I've jumped on that bandwagon. And I've got a really good seat on it, and I hate to give that up.
Right on. That's fair.
But I mean, so the prequels, with the time that passed, right? these are these are not your father's Star Wars movies,
I
right?
think that was the point.
Right. So this is to bring in a whole new generation,
Hmm.
and cynically speaking, to sell a whole bunch of new toys and merch, right? So as much as I like to hate on them, they have their place. They're not as awful as I like to poke fun of them at, um, but they fall short in a number of areas. And this isn't just Revenge of the Sith. Um, like for example, I feel like Darth Maul was completely wasted. Right?
Yes,
They
very much
introduced
so.
this total badass character and then throw him away. Well,
Right.
they did the same thing with Count Dooku in
Mhm.
this. Um, Jesus, you have Christopher Lee,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
a guy who has effectively actually killed people in sword fights.
Hmm.
how do you waste him as
Yeah,
an actor?
Well,
Uh,
and another thing about this one that I have somewhat of a problem with is this is the first movie that was not contained within itself. And how I'm saying that is you can't go from the Clone Wars to Revenge of the Sith and know the whole story. You have to go into the Clone Wars and watch the
yeah,
Clone Wars TV series because that plays a lot into Revenge of the Sith and what happens because General Grievous is brought in and you really don't understand really who and what he is
yeah.
right.
because you have to go back to the Clone Wars. And so this is the first movie that required something in between in order for it to make sense.
And
Hmm.
I hate it. This goes back to my comic book days. I used to hate it when they would have these epic storylines that were cross title. It's like what you're trying to do is make me read a bunch of titles that I don't read
Right,
Yeah,
so that I can get the whole story.
right,
And yeah, it's kind of the same thing here. You're making me watch a show, which whether or not you like the show is irrelevant. You shouldn't have to watch it to know what's going on here.
right.
Um, Another problem I have, and so this is going to be a problem with any kind of prequel that you do. You have to be careful what could possibly break canon.
Hmm.
They did
yes.
a ton of cool stuff with R2D2,
Hmm.
right? The jet engines, the flamethrowers, the but he doesn't have those in 6, 7, and 8,
Right,
right? No, not 6, 7, 8, 4, 5, and 6.
right,
Hmm.
right.
It's like did he get stolen and go to a chop shop? What? And then of course that brings the whole wiping the memory thing. It's like, well, if his memory wasn't wiped, why doesn't he know who all these people are in the later movies? That kind of thing. You have to be real careful if you're not trying to make um, a strict universe timeline. It doesn't matter, right? Like
Hmm.
Star Trek. Star
Yeah,
Trek never leaned as heavily on maintaining canon as Star Wars tried to do.
Well, but remember, R2's R2's memory was not wiped. C3PO's
Right, that's what I'm
was.
saying.
Yeah.
But because R2's wasn't, why in the later movies does he seem to not have any knowledge of people?
Well, see,
That
but that's the thing. Zig's theory, and I fall into this. He said this for years, is that R2 did know, and R2 was telling C3PO the whole time, and
C-3PO thought it
C3PO
was
thought he was
crazy.
crazy.
Yeah, but
oh
because
my
you
god!
can't hear
So what you're
R2's
saying is
dialogue. Yeah,
C3PO gaslit R2.
Right.
yeah.
But you talk
Uh,
and you talk about breaking canon. Rogue One does this as well, as does the Obi-Wan Kenobi TV series. It breaks canon. It kind of hurts the future stories because in Rogue One and the Obi-Wan Kenobi TV show, you see Darth Vader at his full height of power,
Hmm.
his
sure,
full
sure.
range of abilities. And you see just how much of a badass Darth Vader is.
And in the later
But then
movies,
you
he
go
is
into Star
not.
Wars and it doesn't seem as much, even
Yeah,
though we
Right, because
know
the
in
movies
those.
were made before we had the
Yes,
ability to do all that.
yes,
And yeah, so that is that you don't really want to hold it against them. And in Rogue One, I feel like they were more mindful of it. And so things like that I don't really hold against the prequels as much because that's almost unavoidable.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you want to make a movie the exact same way as you would have made it in the 70s, you're going to have that problem.
Yeah.
Star Trek, all the prequel stuff, the ships look newer and nicer than the original
Right.
Enterprise.
Right.
You can't help that.
Right.
So I don't hold it against them, but it is. I don't like anything that pulls me out of the movie experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and honestly, it's almost like the only way to fix this is to sit down and rewrite out the scripts properly, with a good dialogue person, and remake the
Or
whole thing epic style. You tell the three you make them all at the same time, like you did Lord of the Rings. You make
Lord of
9
the Rings
films.
was already written, right?
Yes,
So-
but you make 9 films. You show the middle 3, you show the first 3, you show the last 3 in
Well,
epic
yeah.
style.
So what you're saying
But
is
you have to make them all at the same time.
You have to have a complete story before you start.
Exactly, and
A
that's
la
the problem.
Babylon 5.
Yeah, that's why Star Wars falls apart here. Well, I don't say falls apart. That's a broad
That's why they
thing.
struggle with the canon.
Yes.
And it's the
Yes.
same thing with Star Trek, right? Because there's constantly new stuff coming in.
Yeah.
It's a little more telling because for so long, Star Wars was very strict about canon,
In their
Mhm.
novels and
then the rules changed, and it unfortunately makes things kind of muddled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Another problem I have with this is, and it's Luke does it too. It's the whining.
Oh, sure.
It's like I get it, so this is the journey of a non-hero to an epic hero,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
right? But do we have to start out with I don't like sand, it gets everywhere and it itches.
Right.
I was gonna go to Tashi Station and pick up some power
converters.
It's like you know what? Fine, stay the fuck home. I'm just gonna go without you.
Right.
Yeah. I got this.
Well,
I don't need you, kid.
And that's what I said. I have not seen anything else that Hayden Christensen's been in. I've heard that he's a good actor. I've heard there's been some stuff he's in where he's excellent.
Broken Glass.
It's just not here.
No, it is not.
It's and I don't know if it's him or if it's the writing.
It's the writing.
It's the writing.
It's the writing.
It's hard to tell.
Padme, oh my god, Natalie Portman, she's a brilliant actress.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a brilliant actress when she was young too.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I know she's brilliant, even if she was playing a romantic interest with a cardboard cutout.
Mhm.
It would play better.
Mm-hmm.
Hayden Christensen can't be that bad, right?
No.
So yeah, I absolutely writing and directing, you have to play them both for this, for the romantic story. And I mean that's probably universally recognized as the biggest failure of the whole prequel.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not to mention the kind of creepy, teenage princess falling in love with a 6-year-old boy.
He was 10.
Wasn't he 6 when it started?
10. No, he was 10.
He was 10 and she was like 14.
Yeah, that's right.
So when they meet up again, he's 20, she's like 24, 25.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe a little less creepy, but I don't know. There's still weird vibes there. And my only other big issue, and this kind of goes back to Count Dooku and Darth Maul too. Since the 70s, we were told the Jedi were completely badass, especially when they were wielding their lightsabers.
Mm-hmm.
And in so many cases, they went down like punks. And I hate that.
In the Order 66, a lot of them went down just.
And I mean, even
just too quick.
So they got surprised, right? This was unexpected, but it still feels like a letdown.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The idea of Order 66 is fine. The way I completely agree. The way the Jedi went down was just too quick.
Especially in the movie, because it feels like it's like it was like a day, and all but a few stragglers were wiped out.
Yeah.
When you look at other stuff outside of this movie, yeah, there was a time, they were hunted, they were hiding, there were actually lots of them
Mhm.
Hmm.
that went into hiding. But for the purposes of this movie, yeah, it doesn't feel that way. It feels like they went down like bitches.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And and as time is going on, we're we're getting more and more Jedi that apparently went into hiding
Yeah.
that were around when Luke was being trained as a Jedi, but yet Yoda said, he or Obi-Wan, whichever one said it, he's our last hope.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. There was some other Jedi still out there.
Yeah.
Um,
Again, it's
So
almost
that's
like
that
the only
canon,
way to really fix it is to remake the whole thing
yeah,
all
right?
at once.
but you can't.
Right.
You can't.
Sure, you can.
No, no.
Sure,
No,
you
because
can.
then you end up with the digital remasters of the original.
No, 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 no. I mean, like what? Like with a new cast, a new script. I
Oh,
mean,
right. So Star
make it.
Wars, we get away from the Skywalker saga.
Yeah.
If you when you start to tell a new story, have it all. The universe is too vast, but
Yeah.
have it fleshed out as much as you can.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
and there's hope with that with the new movie that supposedly is going to be starting in production in April. Um, the new story centered around Rey and her rebuilding the Jedi Order.
Yeah.
Right.
Um, so hopefully we're going to get that. Hopefully we're going
Hey,
to get more fleshed out.
maybe the Skywalker saga just isn't a good story, and is the only reason we're fascinated and captivated by it is because it was new and we saw it when we were young.
No, it's a good story. So it's Beowulf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Arthur.
It's the hero's journey.
Yes.
Ascension of the King. Yeah, but it's done, right?
Yeah.
We don't. There's a reason we don't have Beowulf 2.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
although I'm sure Asylum has made one and it's out there. But regardless, uh, tell the story and be done, and tell a different story in that universe.
Hmm.
That's what we want. We want
Hmm.
to see more of what's in that universe. It doesn't have to be the freaking Skywalkers all the time.
No.
No.
You
No,
know,
it does not.
they are like the Kardashians of the galactic empire.
Did you
Hmm.
say Cardassians or Kardashians?
Kardashians with the sh. It's like,
Hmm.
yeah, okay, we get their story. We can be done now.
Yeah, yeah, we can go on to something else. Let's
But
talk about somebody else.
That's why
there
I
are
have
good things in this movie.
there are some good things this movie. Like I said, the lightsaber battles are truly epic.
Mhm.
The fleet battle at the very beginning is truly epic.
The Kashyyyk environment, which they went back to the
Yes,
Star Wars Holiday Special for, is beautiful.
is beautiful. It's phenomenal. Um, well, one part in the fleet battle though, which as I watched it again, is one thing that kind of troubles me is as Obi-Wan and Anakin are going towards the Star Cruiser. Obi-Wan says, "Well, did you happen to notice the shields are still up?" And Anakin goes, "Oh, so sorry, blah blah," and flips over him and shoots it out. And my thought there is, well, Obi-Wan, you see it. Why don't
Why
you
don't
shoot it
you
out?
shoot it?
Oh, but maybe he was out of blaster juice.
Yeah, maybe, who knows?
Blaster juice.
Who knows? Who knows? But yes, there is good about this, but then there's things in it that ruin it. Like I said, the love story is one of it, part of it. Um, the transformation of Anakin into the Darth Vader armor to
Hmm.
me is just traumatic.
Yeah.
It's
As it should be.
traumatic. Yes. I mean, as the helmet is being lowered on and you're seeing inside that helmet for the first time and what his view is going to be, is just traumatic. But then you have the terrible,
No,
no, that was just awful.
with
But
his tiny hands.
but the anger leading up to that is he is just crushing everything around him with the force
Hmm.
is just great. There are really great pieces about it, and the storyline overall is pretty good.
Well, the
It
storyline was almost though pre-established, right?
Yes.
Like we had to get to just like Rogue One. This is a story you only have this much room to tell because we have to get to this point.
Hmm.
I will point something out that may have helped too. That they Lucas excised all scenes of a group of senators, including Padme, Bail Organa, and Mon Mothma, organizing an alliance to prevent Palpatine from usurping any more emergency powers. Though this is essentially the birth of the Rebel Alliance, the scenes were discarded to achieve more focus on Anakin's story.
Yeah, maybe we could have cut out some romance and left that in.
The scene where Yoda arrives on Dagobah to begin his self-imposed exile was also in there. Cut that out.
Oh, okay. I was going to say that's not in the movie.
No.
Yeah, so I mean, we could have all those wasted scenes. Them in the field with the space cows. The wasted scenes like that on this failed romantic story.
Yeah.
And focused on other stuff.
Here's another scene where a great actor. It's got to be the dialogue because Bail Organa,
Jimmy Smits
is a great actor. He's
Yes.
really good. But when he and Obi-Wan and Yoda are sitting on the Tantive 4 talking about the twins, it is a terrible acting scene when Bail goes, "We will take the baby girl. My wife and I always wanted to adopt a baby girl." It's a terrible scene.
It is.
Give you 20 credits for the girl child.
Right. Yes. So the writing is a big part of that, which takes away from it. But overall, it's an enjoyable movie to me. It really is. I enjoy watching it. I can watch it again. Like I said, I watched it again this week and have a great time with it. I've watched The Force Awakens multiple times because I like The Force Awakens.
Mm-hmm.
The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, I have seen once.
You should try them again. I
liked The Last Jedi.
Wasn't that happy with them.
And I get it. I feel like I understand why people don't like it, but I like it. Rise of Skywalker, to me, hands down, worst of the Star Wars properties.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I didn't like Obi-Wan. I have mixed feelings about Book of Boba Fett.
I thought Obi-Wan was great.
Yeah, Rise of Skywalker was. No, I don't want to sidetrack again and do another 2-hour episode, but yeah, I mean, I didn't dislike Book of Boba Fett. I was disappointed in a lot of it.
Right on.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we will. I think the next one we're gonna do is a solo. So I gotta go back. I have these written out in a list on what comes chronologically.
Yeah, solo story would be the Han Solo story. The solo is next, followed by Rogue One.
Yeah.
So.
Oh wait.
Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, no, that's right.
I've got it written down.
I don't really like it. I don't hate it, but I don't like it. But also, I recognize the parts that aren't good, and I also recognize that it wasn't made for me.
No.
So
it was made for your kids and my kids, my older kids. Yeah.
Right. No, I agree with that. I agree. All right. Well, I think we've taken that one apart.
Right on. That's why I'm doing this chronologically. It's like everybody has, all these takes on the Star Wars and whatnot. If we do them chronologically, we might hit on something that no one's really talked about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. The fandoms have all picked everything apart, the pieces, and everyone. They even contradict themselves back and forth. I will say, unfortunately, the toxicity in the online fandoms for Star Wars, I think, is doing as much to drive people away from Star Wars as it is to engage them.
Yeah.
You think it's a fan?
And it's not just Star Wars. The same can be said of almost any fandom now, which is unfortunate. But Star Wars is, of course, one of the biggest. It's. I wish that toxicity weren't so prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of gatekeeping, which we don't.
A lot of that too.
We don't need. It's get in there. I mean, that's the whole point of this. The nerdery side of this podcast is to tear those gates down and go, hey, if you've never seen this, you should check it out.
Well, and honestly, and we're going past this now, but I think future endeavors of Star Wars, I think you're going to see much better now that Kathleen Kennedy is out.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, because Feige is in.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Uh, that'll help, but he's not a magic bullet.
No,
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 but
but Dave Filoni is also pretty high up there.
or wait,
Echelon.
is it Filoni that's
It's
over?
Filoni.
It's Filoni that's over it now, not
Yeah,
Feige. Feige is over Marvel. I'm so
yeah.
sorry. Dave Filoni is over Lucasfilms. Kathleen Kennedy's out. So, and
So what was
I
Dave
think that's
Filoni
good.
responsible for?
Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, Filoni.
Rebels. Rebels was
Yeah,
his baby.
yeah, Rebels, Ahsoka.
Oh, okay.
I
So
mean, and I
it's
mean,
a mixed
and
bag for me.
The Mandalorian is Filoni and Favreau,
Hmm.
but Filoni is now in charge.
Yeah, so his stuff is kind of a mixed bag for me.
Hmm.
Nothing that I detest, but I have mixed feelings about a lot of it. But I do have to say, um, Rebels is a fantastic animated Star Wars series and severely underrated.
Yes. Yeah, I think
So
we can all agree on that.
I encourage any Star Wars fan who hasn't seen it to
Yeah.
get through the first half season, first season.
Hmm.
Um, that's true of almost any show. It's a fabulous show, and
Oh
the
yeah.
story, the character and story arc is fantastic.
Hmm. Hmm. So, and well, and you talk about Rebels and everything like that. Understand when I talked about that the Clone Wars, I think it did a disservice by forcing you to watch, or excuse me, Revenge of the Sith by forcing you to watch the Clone Wars movie or TV show in order to understand stuff some of the movie. I think some people may say the same thing about Ahsoka because you really needed to watch Rebels in order to understand some of the stuff in Ahsoka, but I think Ahsoka encompassed it a little bit differently.
I think so
Right,
too. Yeah.
Ahsoka. It helps if you've seen Rebels. I don't think it's required.
Yeah, it's not a
Right, right.
requirement.
Whereas in Revenge of the Sith, Clone Wars is almost required.
Yeah, yeah, it's really easy to get lost. Whereas Ahsoka does a better job of explaining itself.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys on that. As always, we talk about, go out, watch it for yourself. Let us know your thoughts on it. Let us know if you think we're right or wrong, anything in between. So, with that, I will step over on the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For today, I got my information off the Internet Archive Wayback Machine, The Guardian, True Crime Detective, Daily Star, and Wikipedia. And this is the murder of Anita Cobby.
Anita Cobby?
Anita Cobby. So the tragedy that would shock the whole of Australia began just before 10 p.m. on the 2nd of February 1986. A registered nurse, 26-year-old Anita Cobby, had been having dinner with friends after finishing her shift at Sydney Hospital on Macquarie Street next to the Parliament House in the city. Anita was someone whose calling in life had been to help others. She was a nurse by trade, and the former beauty pageant winner always made sure her patients were tended to with the utmost care. For the people whose lives she touched, she'd been nothing short of an angel on earth. She was a 26-year-old Australian woman from Blacktown, New South Wales, who was kidnapped while walking home from Blacktown Railway Station and subsequently sexually assaulted and murdered. 2 days after being reported as missing by family, Cobby's body was discovered by a man in the boiler room of his farm in Prospect, New South Wales. Investigations led to the arrest of 5 men who were later convicted of her abduction, rape, and murder on June 10, 1987. Each was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on June 16, 1987. Good for them. Upon arriving to the location of her body, it was clear to authorities that Cobby had sustained a prolonged and vicious attack with multiple sharp puncture wounds and cuts, as well as lacerations from being rolled in and dragged through barbed wire. She had obvious signs of being beaten, kicked, and struck, mainly from the bruising, cuts, and abrasions covering a large percentage of her body. Her cause of death was ultimately the result of a slit throat, an act which the medical examiner noted nearly decapitated her. The forensic pathologist who performed her autopsy additionally noted that Anita was still likely conscious at the time of her throat being cut and estimated it would have taken between 2 to 3 minutes for her to bleed to death. The murder received widespread media coverage, condemnation, and attention, including an impassioned local and national campaign to reinstate the death penalty at the time for the worst of Australian offenders. Anita Lynch was born in Sydney on November 2nd, 1959, to Gary Bernard Lynch, who was a graphic artist with the Royal Canadian Air Force, and Grace Peggy Lynch, who was a nurse. As a teenager, Anita participated in beauty pageants, including winning the Miss Western Suburbs pageant in November of 1979, and had a promising career as a model. However, she decided to instead follow into her mother's footsteps into nursing. Growing up, she proudly told anyone who would listen that someday she would become a nurse just like her mother, and it was a goal from which she would never waver. After graduating from secondary school, Anita had enrolled in a nursing program at Sydney Hospital, which is where she met her future husband, John Cobby, while studying for her nursing degree at the school. They married on March 27, 1982. At the time of her murder, however, in 1986, the couple had separated, and Anita was living with her parents in Blacktown. Having come to the difficult realization they were no longer on the same page, they decided to put their marriage on hold, at least temporarily. And according to John, he and Anita were on good terms when she was murdered and actually had been planning to reconcile. After spending some time apart, it began to dawn on Anita and John that they were better together, and by the winter of 1986, they were slowly working towards a reconciliation. And with the flame that has started to fade now rekindled, the couple once again looking towards the future. However, the happy ever after they envisioned was not meant to be. Anita worked in Sydney and commuted daily from her home in Blacktown. And on the day of her murder, she finished work at Sydney Hospital at 3 p.m. and met friends for a dinner in nearby Redfern. She then caught a train from Central Railway Station to Blacktown Station. And arriving in Blacktown, she would usually ring her father, who would pick her up. But on the day of her death, she most likely decided to walk home after finding the phone to be out of order and no taxis available at the taxi rank. Aside from her killers, only 2 witnesses saw Anita after she left the train station. She was walking alone from the station along Newton Road around 10 p.m. when a gang of 5 men drove up beside her and stopped their stolen white HT Holden Kingswood. 2 men leapt from the car and dragged her in the vehicle as she kicked and screamed. A teenage boy, his younger sister, and his mother heard someone screaming from the street outside of their house and had gone outside in time to see Anita forced into the attacker's car. The boy ran across the road to help, but the car drove off before he reached it, and on returning home, he called the police to report what he had seen.
Nice. Quick action.
Quick action. If you see something, say something.
If you see something, say something.
A few minutes later, their neighbor and his girlfriend arrived home, and after being told of the abduction, drove off in search for the car. They eventually drove down Reen Road and stopped by the now empty Holden, where the man used a spotlight to search the adjacent paddock. Seeing nothing in the paddock and believing the car was the car he was looking for was for a different model Holden, he returned home. The attackers would later state that they had hidden in the long grass to avoid the flashlight and waited for the man to leave, so they were there the whole time. Once inside the car, Anita had been ordered to strip off her clothes, but refused, begging her attackers to let her go and saying she was married and also menstruating, which is something we've seen in other stories where women have tried to use that tactic to sway her attackers from raping them. Her attackers punched Anita repeatedly, breaking her nose and both cheekbones before forcing her to perform fellatio on all 5 men. The attackers then drove to a service station to purchase gas using money stolen from Anita's purse, and she was then driven down Reed Road to the secluded paddock while being held down the car, raped repeatedly and being continually beaten by her 5 attackers. They then dragged the brutally beaten Anita to the paddock along a barbed wire fence, where they dumped her and continued to sexually and physically abuse her for some time. According to his taped confession later, one of the attackers, John Travers, then became concerned that Anita could identify him because she had seen their faces and heard their names, and convinced the other attackers to kill her. Urged on by the others, Travers slit her throat, almost severing her head, and her body was placed on a barbed wire fence before the 5 men left the scene.
They put her up on a fence.
Mm-hmm.
Bastards.
Basically on display. Yep.
Like a coyote.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, they don't have coyotes down there. Yeah.
All right. Like a dingo.
Oh, yeah, dingo. Yeah, there you go.
When Anita did not return home, her family initially thought she was staying overnight with a friend, but after learning she had failed to appear at work the next day, they reported her missing on the 3rd of February. On the morning of February 4th, her naked body was found in the paddock by a farmer investigating what his cows were milling around. Her body was initially identified by her distinctive wedding ring, was still on her finger when she was found. And her estranged husband, John, was initially suspected of her murder, but was quickly cleared. I always suspect the husband.
Yeah. Well, most of the time it's true.
The Australian public reacted with anger upon hearing details of Anita's murder. On the 6th of February, the New South Wales state government posted a $50,000 reward for the information leading to the capture of her killers. Also on February 6th, morning radio host John Laws obtained a leaked copy of Anita's autopsy report, which gave explicit details of her injuries, and read it live on the air, both shocking and galvanizing public sentiment.
Wow.
In a 2016 interview with 7 News, Laws said he did it because he felt the general public ought to know. It incited anger in the public that murders like this were happening and we weren't being given the full details. On February 9th, police reenacted Anita's movements on the night of her disappearance in the hope of jogging the memories of travelers or others who might have seen her. Constable Debbie Wallace wore similar clothing to Anita's and traveled the 9:12 p.m. train to Blacktown. Detectives interviewed the passengers and showed them photos of Anita while Wallace walked the length of the train during the journey, and her murder had become front page news. Gruesome details of the offenses and the harrowing atrocity gradually unfolded. Understandably, the community, indeed the whole of Australia, was outraged, and even the police involved in the investigation were deeply affected. Following a tip-off from a police informant regarding the stolen Holden, police started searching for Travers, Michael Murdoch, and brothers Les, Michael, and Gary Murphy after they discovered that some of them had a history of violence and that Travers had a reputation for carrying a knife. On February 21st, police arrested Travers and Murdoch at the home of Travers' uncle and Les Murphy at Travers' own house. Murdoch and Murphy were charged with offenses relating to stolen cars and released on police bail. Travers, who admitted that he had stolen the car, made conflicting statements about the murder and was detained in police custody. And while in custody, he requested that a friend be called so he could bring him cigarettes. The phone number was handed to the investigating police, who contacted the friend, who was a woman. The woman, who was Travers' aunt, eventually dubbed Miss X, agreed to help with the investigation, met with an officer, and gave him details of Travers' background. Miss X was subsequently sent back in to talk to Travers, agreeing to hide a recording microphone in her bra while she visited him in his cell and was able to obtain a confession. Miss X later went to Murdoch's home while wearing a concealed recording device to capture his own statements on the tape as well, and then eventually the 5 men were arrested and charged with murder. Police ended up being praised for their quick response in capturing all the suspects involved, and in total, only 22 days had elapsed from the time of the murder to the time all the suspects were taken into custody, and that is fast.
Super fast.
The 5 men were charged, who later all pleaded guilty or were convicted for the murder. They had over 50 prior convictions for offenses, including armed robbery, assault, larceny, car theft, breaking and entering, drug use, escaping lawful custody, and receiving stolen goods, and rape. They need a 3 strikes rule there.
Mm-hmm.
John Travers, who was 18 in 1986, was considered the ringleader of the gang. He was raised in relative poverty in Blacktown, was the oldest of 8 children from unmarried teenage parents. By age 14, he was already an alcoholic and was expelled from school during his 10th year for being continually disruptive to other students. Beyond schooling, Travers had very few jobs and relied mostly on unemployment benefits as a source of income, and he was eventually committed to Boys Town, which is a juvenile detention center, by his mother. His father, whom he never shared a close relationship with, left the household in 1981, And finding it difficult to support the family, Travers relied on crime to provide food, such as stealing animals for the family dinners, including chickens and ducks from nearby households. The health of his mother eventually deteriorated, and he and his siblings were sent to live with foster families while she was placed in hospice. And Travers had a history of violent sexual behavior against males and females, as well as bestiality, harming animals.
Mm-hmm.
During the times where he resorted to stealing poultry for his family meals, he is alleged to have sexually abused the birds prior to butchering and cooking them.
He's a chicken fucker.
He's a chicken fucker. Witnesses have also recounted on several occasions Travers had acquired a live lamb or sheep for butchering prior to a barbecue party, alleging that he slit the animal's throat as he sodomized and abused them sexually before butchering and roasting the carcasses on a spit. I know. Michael Murdoch was a childhood friend and criminal associate of Travers. He had spent a great deal of his childhood in juvenile prisons where he experienced sexual assaults on himself, and he was known to have written to politicians during this period of imprisonment seeking protection from such assaults. Michael, Gary, and Les Murphy, the three brothers from a family of 9 children, were also accused, and Michael Murphy, who was 33, was the eldest of the 9 Murphy children. He was sent to live with his grandmother when he was 12. Gary Murphy, who was 28, a hearing impairment affected Gary's schooling, and he left early to seek work. He was noted as not being able, as being an able and willing worker before the crimes, and his strong interest in cars led him to face several car theft-related charges in the years preceding the murder. Les Murphy, who was 22, the youngest of the Murphy children, was known as having the worst temperament. He had faced children's court on many occasions for a number of theft-related offenses before being accused of Anita's murder. So the trial began in Sydney on March 16, 1987, and given the nature of the crime, the atmosphere in the community after the arrest of Anita's alleged killers was one of brooding malevolence. It was manifested at the first formal court appearance of the 5 accused at the tiny Westmere's Coroner's Court. Uniformed police were present in large numbers in case of trouble. Ominously, a dummy dangled from a noose tied to a tree branch outside, and a large crowd had gathered. Some held up placards calling for a restoration of the death penalty, and showing solidarity with Anita. Uniformed nurses were also present. As the prison van edged out of the Westmead Hospital, the crowd surged forward. They banged on the side of the van and booed and catcalled, and it was clear the chances of finding a sympathetic jury in the city metropolitan area or in the world were zero, and chances of finding a cool and impartial one were slight. Just before proceedings began, Travers changed his plea to guilty. The city newspaper The Sun published a front-page story on the day the trial began carrying the headline, Anita murdered man guilty, alongside the image of Travers. The news story also referred to Michael Murphy as an unemployed prison escapee of no fixed address, and another in the same paper detailed Murphy's criminal convictions and his recent escape from Silverwater Correctional Center, where he was serving a 25-year sentence for a string of burglaries and thefts. The jury was discharged due to potentially prejudicial information published about Murphy, however. According to the medical examiner's report during trial, Anita's body showed extensive bruising on her head, breast, face, shoulders, groin, thighs, and legs, consistent with a systematic beating, including a blow of considerable force around the right eye. She also had lacerations on her hips, thighs, and legs from the barbed wire, several cuts to her neck, resulting in the severing of her ear and windpipe and near decapitation,
Wow.
and many cuts to her hands and fingers, resulting in the severing of 3 of her fingers, which likely occurred when she raised her hands to her face, trying to protect herself from the knife. The medical examiner later testified that after Anita's throat was cut, she would have died within 2 to 3 minutes, as I had said before. He also testified that some radio bulletins purportedly based on his own report contained misinformation about the type and extent of Anita's injuries. She was not mutilated apart from the slashing of her throat and hands. There had been no attack with a knife on her stomach or genitals, and her shoulders had not been dislocated.
So the mutilation of her hands was just as a defensive wound. That makes sense.
That's what his report was saying, yeah. The trial for the members of the gang lasted 54 days, while the men's defense, relying on convincing the jury their minimal involvement in beating and murder. On June 10th, 87, all four were found guilty of sexual assault and murder. And on June 16th, they were sentenced in the Supreme Court of New South Wales to life imprisonment plus additional time without the possibility of parole.
So they're still in.
They are still in. Justice Alan Maxwell described the crime as one of the most horrifying physical and sexual assaults. This was a calculated This was a calculated killing done in cold blood. The executive should grant the same degree of mercy as bestowed on their victim. Anita's parents would join forces with Christine and Peter Simpson, who are the parents of murderer Ebony Simpson, to create the Homicide Victims Support Group, which is a community support group that helps families deal with heinous crimes. Did I do Ebony Simpson, or is that coming? I think I did Ebony Simpson.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think that was one that I covered.
You did quite a string of Australian ones.
Yeah, I know.
Like yes, Ebony Simpson. Yeah, because I remember typing it in for the TikTok.
Yeah. The Lynches also campaigned in seeking tougher sentencing and truth in sentencing laws, which eventuated after Anita's murder. Anita's father, Gary Lynch, died on September 14, 2008, at age 90, suffering from Alzheimer's, and her mother tragically died of lung cancer in 2013 at the age of 88. As of 2022, John Travers was housed in Wellington Correctional Center in maximum security. In 1988, he was transferred to Maitland Gaol and was housed there until 92 when he was transferred to the Goulburn Correctional Center. In 1996, he and another inmate were being transported from Goulburn to Long Bay Hospital at Long Bay Correctional Complex when they attempted to escape from the prison by hacksawing through and kicking in the back door. When the attempt was noticed, the van was pulled over at Bowral Police Station and the two were arrested and charged. And Travers was kept regularly in protection at Goldberg because he was often involved in fights with other inmates and threatening prison staff. From 2005 to 2015, Travers was housed in Lithgow Correctional Center and then eventually transferred to the Wellington Correctional Center. Michael Murphy was housed in the Long Bay Correctional Complex in maximum security. In 88, Michael was housed along with his brother Gary in the newly built Special Protection Unit in Long Bay. In 92, he was transferred to Lithgow, where he undertook 10-year studies and weekly work. A few years later, he was transferred to Goldberg, where he spent most of his imprisonment, usually kept to himself and stayed out of trouble. In 2015, he was reclassified to medium security until 2015, when he was reclassified back to maximum security. And in 2018, it was reported he had terminal cancer and was living in palliative care. And he ended up dying in Long Bay Hospital on February 21st, 2019, at the age of 66. As of 2022, Gary Murphy was housed at Goulburn. In 1988, he was housed with his brother Michael in the Special Protection Unit. A few years later, Gary Murphy was transferred to Maitland Gaol Correctional Center, where he was housed until the prison's closure. And in 2005, he was placed in Goldberg Correctional Center and was housed there until June 2019, where he was transferred to Long Bay. On the morning of June 25th, 2019, he was severely beaten by other prisoners in the shower block of 10 Wing in Long Bay and was transferred to hospital in critical condition. On August 23rd, 2020, it was revealed by the Daily Telegraph that Murphy at some point had been moved back to Long Bay from Long Bay to Goulburn, which is where he supposedly still is. As of 2022, Les Murphy was housed at Goulburn. There was a long list of associates in Goulburn Center that he had, and he was not allowed to have contact with. And in 2005, he got in further trouble for failing a urine test, so he got into drugs while he was in there too.
Huh. Smuggled up someone's bum.
Right. And finally, Michael Murdoch was formerly a maximum security inmate at Goulburn until December 99, when he was reclassified to medium security and transferred to Bathurst Correctional Complex. In 2002, he was reclassified to maximum security and transferred to Lithgow, where he still is today. And last but not least, a park in Sullivan Street, Blacktown, was named the Anita Cobby Reserve in memory of Anita.
Oh,
that's the story of the murder of Anita Cobby.
Well, thank you for that, sir.
You betcha.
I find it fascinating. There was so much going on in Australia at that time.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So justice is a complicated thing.
Yeah.
You know, because during this, you mentioned the three strike thing, right? Which I agree with in concept. Unfortunately, in the places that have it, um,
It's
it's not applied correctly.
yeah, it's misused.
You know, but a lot of legal things are like one that I absolutely hate: civil forfeit, um, civil asset forfeiture,
Mhm.
which is a freaking nightmare and almost always, as near as I can tell, abused, by the law enforcement. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's definitely a problem apparently in Australia and here, um, and in Japan, as with the previous um, murdery of these people either not getting the help they need, which speaks to how poorly we understand mental health in the process in the brain, um, not being kept out of the public for the safety of the public as they
Mhm.
should be.
Hmm.
Uh, Apparently, all over the world, we have got to do better than that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And while I'm ordinarily not a proponent of the death penalty, it's things like this that keep me from being completely against it.
Sure.
Right? Um, I can see getting in a fight with somebody and getting so mad or whatever, and that you accidentally kill them.
yeah,
Uh,
not your intention. Not your
right.
intention. Yeah.
But I mean, even a premeditated murder, I can see in certain instances where there might be a valid reason for you to go through all that trouble to kill somebody,
Hmm.
right? But something like this, death penalty is, I think, should absolutely be on the table.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. A crime so heinous and so brutal. Yeah.
Yeah,
Those people don't deserve to keep their lives. You have the other side of the coin where people think they should suffer in prison the rest of their lives. Well, I think we have seen enough and read enough that you can actually get creature comforts in prison.
yeah. I mean, unless we get to the point where we can fix their brain somehow.
That's what I would like. That's where the research needs to go. We need to
Right?
fix
Yeah.
these people. We need to
That,
stop making. Well, for starters, don't beat your kids.
right.
Don't
Don't
beat.
abuse the animals.
Yeah, don't abuse the animals. Yeah,
Don't set fires.
yeah.
Oh my god, and I feel so bad because I really wanted to make this joke while you were talking about that. The whole kind of,
I need a
man,
hobby.
this barbecue tastes funny.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, but until we can fix them, right? Some people need to be removed from society, but maybe not necessarily put to death. And then there are people where it's just like, you know what? Let's just go ahead and execute them and be done.
Right.
It's not something we should take joy in. Um, it's a dirty, terrible, awful thing, but for the protection of society as a whole, it's what we need to do.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You talk about this barbecue tastes funny. Go back and listen to last week's episode.
Yeah.
Go back and listen to the episode that just came out last week.
Now I don't think I want to.
Yeah.
I'm 99% sure I don't want to.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to touch on, because you mentioned them having trouble um, getting impartial jurors, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, we need professional jurors. I believe Japan uses professional jurors.
I've heard of
Um,
that.
it's a job. It
Yep.
pays well.
You're paid to be
There,
impartial.
there's oversight. Um, it makes the selection process easier because you already have a pool of jurors. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have to go out and drag people out of their lives. Um, Many of whom don't want to participate in the process, which
No,
I
and
think is really
who will just say guilty to get it so they could go home.
right. Well, or who will, walk through the door going, "Yeah, he's guilty." Burn him at the stake, just so they don't have to go through jury duty, right? Um, I think if we had professional jurors, also you're less likely to be able to bribe them to bribe or intimidate them
Right.
uh, to affect the outcome as well. So I really wish that was something that, especially here in the U.S., we would look at more seriously.
Yeah. No, agreed. Agreed. Well, thank you both for taking that journey with me. I appreciate it. We appreciate all of our listeners for staying with us and listening in on the show. That'll take us to the end of another recording week. And as always, you can find our information on nerderymurdery.com. That's our hub for everything that we talk about. You'll find links to the content that we had today, plus pictures about the items we talked about, and you'll find the link to our YouTube page, which Zig so often updates.
Yes, we will. We update that with things that we think are funny, and then playlists for the episodes, which I encourage everybody to go see before the episode airs, just so you know what we're talking about, as well as when this episode releases, I'll add this video to that episode as well.
Yep. You can also find the link to our merchandise, where if you wish to show off your Nerdery Murdery fandom, please do consider purchasing something from the store. That really helps our show. Along with you'll find the link to our Patreon, where along with our merchandise, our patrons help us with the costs of the show. There are costs that help to keep this show on the air, to keep producing everything. It's not free, and it doesn't go to fuel our Lamborghinis that don't exist. It doesn't go to our beautiful houses that don't exist, or our beautiful vacations that we take constantly, because we don't.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. And last but not least, please don't forget to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It helps us, helps others find our content that may be looking for the information we're talking about. So with that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
and I'm Geoffrey with your murdering.
God, say something.
Have a good day.
Cue the music.